Hello and welcome back to my channel. Spring has definitely arrived to the Czech Republic, and this year I promised myself that I would finally figure out microgreens and sprouts. And so in this video, I will be talking about what those two categories are, because I was definitely confused in the beginning about the differences between the two, how I grew some of these, and most importantly, how I am using them in the different recipes in my kitchen. And at the end of this video, there will be a little bit of spring decorating because, of course, I have to decorate for spring. So, sprouts and microgreens. As far as I understand, they are both part of a life cycle of any plant. It doesn't matter if they turn out this, if they are actually these microorganisms or if it's an actual vegetable that you're planting outside in your garden. It starts from a seed, then it goes into the sprout stage, then it goes into the microgreen stage, and then eventually it becomes like a fully grown plant. And of course that there are no exact definitions, or not definitions, but cutoff lines between the different stages. I mean, it's nature, right? But generally, sprouts are something like this, so just super short, really quite small, and then the microgreen stage is something more like this. Please disregard the bad shape of this plant. This was one I actually bought at the store, and it just is not in a very good condition, but it shows you that it's a pretty long or tall plant at this point with all those bigger leaves at the top. And then again, eventually, if I kept this growing, it would grow into a fully grown plant. In terms of what kinds of vegetables or herbs you want to grow as sprouts or microseeds, or microgreens, you can kind of do pretty much anything, but there definitely are some that are more common than others and that you will commonly find the seeds for, because the seeds, again, as far as I understand, do need to be specific for this kind of growing, not as a mature plant. That's not our goal. And they just pick them in a different way than they would for plants that we want to grow fully. I didn't really dive that deep into that part, but what you can buy in the stores is usually broccoli, radish. I have got arugula, I've seen basil, mint, peas. There's a whole bunch, maybe around 15, 20 seeds to choose from usually, so there is definitely plenty to explore. Now, in terms of how you grow them, so first of all, some seeds need to be soaked first before you do anything else with them. You should find that information on the packaging of the seed. So for example, this mix that I've got here, which is a broccoli and radish, they need it to be soaked for 8 hours, whereas this, which is the arugula, that didn't need any sort of soaking at all. So just look that up on your seed packaging. And then basically for the seeds, the way you grow them is just with water in either something like this, which is a bowl, let me find, that has a sieve on it. And so I'm growing the seeds on the sieve, and there can be water underneath, or they can, when I water them, the water goes through the sieve and it collects in the bowl. It's also very popular to grow them in special jars that have a punctured lid. It's super easy to do a DIY, a milk carton or something, some kind of a container in which they can just be put into that container and then soaked, and then the water gets drained from that container. When it comes to microgreens or plants that you want to grow as microgreens, and by the way, I know that these two look kind of similar. These ones actually look bigger than the microgreens. That's just because I started growing them at around the same time. but I'm already consuming these, whereas I'm definitely waiting with the arugula to really like reach the microgreen stage of the life cycle. So for the microgreens, you want to grow them in soil because since they will be growing for a longer period of time, you want them to grow taller, bigger. You want to give them more nutrients. They're not going to get everything they need from the just water. Otherwise, you could totally grow them in the exact same way. It's just that they probably wouldn't be as nutritious as they can be when they are in the soil. And there is also another reason why you grow them in slightly different ways. With the sprouts, you're eating the whole thing, whereas with the microgreens, I think it will be better visible here, you just take the stem and you eat the stem and the leaves that are on top. You don't eat the roots and the seeds at the bottom. So if you were to grow sprouts in soil, they would be dirty. Like you would then only be able to use, same as with microgreens, the stem and the leaves. So if you want to eat them whole together with the seeds, again, just loads more nutrients and everything, you will need to grow them without soil. And then as for the care for the plants, they just need water. They need watering quite a bit, like usually a couple times a day. Your seed package should again tell you how much watering you need to do. But usually what I have seen in all of these and others as well is like a couple times a day, they need to be either like washed with water in case of the sprouts and then you drain the water out, or you just water, or even like use a spray bottle and spray some water on the seeds in your soil. You do not want to get them too dry. But also you do not want them to be super wet, which is why you're draining the water from the sprouts away. And that's pretty much it. And then you can just watch as from the tiny little seeds, you will start seeing the tiny little green leaves, which I just find that to be very fascinating and exciting. And now for the recipes part.
So the way I've been using these microgreens and sprouts is just sort of adding them to whatever else I was making. I didn't make any recipes specifically with the idea of, or with the microgreens or sprouts being the main ingredient. It was just sort of, well, I'm making this and it could definitely use some microgreens or sprouts, or they would go really well with this, and so I added them. And of course, the easiest way to do that is to sprinkle them on top of some kind of a toast, or in this case, I was doing my sourdough bread with some cream cheese on top of it, and then a little bit of those microgreens. I also did a simple egg salad, and again, that just really worked well with some sprouts on top of it. A super simple snack or a breakfast or even dinner, if that's the type of dinner that you eat. It's just a super easy way to add it and make that meal a little bit more healthy. And then the other two recipes I want to share with you, they are actually like proper meals, I would say. The first one being these pockets that are going to be filled with some baby spinach and feta cheese. So I'm starting by making the dough. I am mixing flour, a little bit of sugar, and some olive oil. Well, actually, the recipe called for olive oil, but I have found that I don't really enjoy the taste of olive oil in any kind of baked goods. It doesn't matter if they are sweet or savory. And so I always in my baking use some neutral tasting oil. In this case, it's the rapeseed oil. So I'm using that together with some dried yeast that I've already put the sugar in and a little bit of water. So I'm adding that as well and making a dough out of it, kneading it for a little bit on the counter. And once it is kneaded, I have split it into 4 equal parts, made little bowls out of those, and then covered them with some tea towel and let them sit on the counter for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, kind of until I was ready to start making dinner. And you, of course, do want the dough to rise a little bit during that time. When I was ready to get them going, I've rolled each of these balls into like a little circle, let's call it that, not always a perfect circle. And on one half of that, I've put the baby spinach, a little bit of the feta cheese, and the microgreens that I was adding to this one. I also had some chicken meat that I made a couple days before this for some other meal, and I had some left over, so some were also with meat. When they were filled up, I would fold the other half that was empty onto this one and made a little bit of an edge, either with a fork or just pressing it down with my fingers. And I browned them in a large pan using some olive oil this time. Now, it is probably true that during this process, since the microgreens are getting cooked, they are losing some of their health benefits. But on the other hand, you are hiding them completely in these pockets. And so for maybe some of your pickier eaters, this might be a good way to get some greens into them that they would otherwise not eat if they just saw them kind of on top of their food. So this just might be handy. For the other recipe I was making, I made some homemade pasta orecchiette. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And I added some broccoli and cheese and the microgreens to it at the end as well. And so for the pasta, I mixed flour with a little bit of salt and then some ricotta cheese. I believe that it could have had more of the ricotta cheese because they just ended up being quite dense, I would say, or how to call it. Like, I think they could have been more fluffier, and I think that if I had more of the cheese in it, that would result in a fluffier texture. There was also one egg with a little bit of water, and then I would mix everything together. Again, knead the dough a little bit and then let it rest for some time. About 15 minutes or so. And then once I was ready to get the pasta going, I would start cutting off little bits from that dough and roll them out. Then cut off little pieces of that. And then the recipe said to just kind of press your finger into that little piece of dough. I think it also didn't work as like they were supposed to come out like these round shapes with like almost a hole in the middle or like a dent in the middle. That's how this type of pasta usually looks. But here, because as I was cutting them, it would, like, the knife would really squish them. Like, the shapes were all weird, but I mean, like, I don't care about the shapes. I wish that they were better tasting. Again, I felt like they were quite dense. So, maybe for next time, I'll try to do a little bit more of the cheese in the dough. And then in terms of the rest of the ingredients, in a large pan, I browned some garlic. And then I added my broccoli, which I already cooked for a couple minutes in water before this. And then the pasta was cooking for about 5 minutes. And after that, I added it to that large pot and kind of heated everything up. and then served it onto the plates with a little dollop of the ricotta cheese and some of those sprouts. So this time the sprouts were added fresh, they were not cooked, so they hopefully have preserved all of their great nutrients. I hope you have found all of those recipes inspiring. Now, before I get to the decorating bit, I wanted to let you know that I have a Patreon page. You can find the link somewhere on the screen, and it's also in the description of the video. You can, of course, simply support me because you like my content here, but I'm actually sharing quite a bit of exclusive content for my Patreons. It's all the things outside of this world of cooking and decorating. You will find things about our renovation there, my pregnancy, gardening. There might even be some macrame and other arts and crafts. So go check it out. And now let's get to some spring decorating.
From my window, sun's coming up like the day before. You're like a stone on my pillow. I don't make a sound when I shut the door. You don't have to wake up yet. We can spend all day in bed. I'll put the TV in the room. We'll have a Netflix marathon. Kenny G saxophone. We'll order in a bunch of food. I'll put your favorite music on all the way baritone. Yeah. Shut the lights, go infrared. We can spend all day in bed. I get the wine and the corkscrew. You don't have to do one single thing. You don't know how much I want you. Just looking at you makes my whole world spin. You don't have to wake up yet. We can spend all day in bed. I'll put the TV in the room. We'll have a Netflix marathon. Kenny G saxophone. We'll order in a bunch of food. I'll put your favorite music on all the way baritone. Shut the lights, go infrared. We can spend all day